Bon, bienvenue à tous et à toutes. Je m'appelle Alison Leclerc, vice-présidente d'AmbCanada, et j'ai le privilège de vous accueillir à cette Assemblée générale de l'Association des anciens ambassadeurs du Canada. C'est vraiment superbe de voir vous ici, de nombre assez élevé. This venue, of course, for those of you who have been to these AGMs before, you know this venue is new to us. Our normal one, the Royal Ottawa Golf Club, is chock full of golf-related events, and so was unavailable to us. But in any event, we thought it would be a good idea to try this out, this combining the AGM with the policy conference. So while your feedback, of course, would be very welcome, it does seem as though the larger number that we've got here today is an indication that it's a pretty good formula. Par rapport à cette réunion, j'espère que vous avez tous eu l'occasion d'examiner les documents envoyés au mardi passé. En bref, l'ordre du jour comprend des rapports du président, du vice-présidente et notre trésorier. Par la suite, il y aura 2 points pour décision. Premièrement, des modifications au règlement administratif et l'approbation du nouveau membre du conseil. Il y aura après d'occasion pour les membres d'enlever d'autres sujets. Il faut utiliser ce micro pour les personnes qui sont avec nous en ligne. Pour les procédures de vote, ils sont très simples. Un membre du comité exécutif va faire la proposition et demander aux membres de lever la main pour indiquer oui ou non. Voilà. Pour les mots introductoires, est-ce qu'il y a soit des questions ou soit des commentaires? Excellent. Sinon, j'invite Michael de prendre la parole pour son rapport présidentiel.
Thank you, Alison. Merci. I'd like to begin to thanking all of you for coming to this year's annual general meeting, everybody who's here in person and those of you who are listening online. I must say it's quite striking to see how many not only current but former board members of this association and past presidents are here in this room. So it's a nice indication that I think we've got a very good momentum. Let's see.
Yeah, it doesn't look very well, does it?
Let's just take a pause. Whoops, a daisy. How's that? That's on? Great. OK. Aujourd'hui a lieu notre 5e Assemblée générale annuelle depuis que nous avons commencé à les organiser en 2022. Ce sera également ma dernière en tant que président, puisque mon 2e mandat de 2 ans prend fin cet été. Le conseil d'administration désignera un nouveau président lors de sa prochaine réunion en juillet. Je ne vais pas passer en revue toutes nos activités de l'année écoulée. Vous les trouverez dans le rapport annuel que vous a été envoyé à tous avant cette réunion. Je vais plutôt vous présenter une vision à plus long terme du chemin parcouru par l'association au cours des 5 dernières années et la direction qu'elle pourrait prendre à l'avenir. When I joined the board of AmbCanada as a member in the spring of 2021, the association was already well launched on a process of internal reform and renewal, begun under the presidency of Gilles Rivard and continuing under the presidency of Abby Dan. Following a consultation with all our members, the association had changed its name from Roma to AmbCanada. An ambitious external education project had been launched called Ambassadors of Note. Internal governance had been reformed by setting up a structure of committees and to focus attention on different areas of work. And a membership task force had been struck to turn around our declining membership at that time. By the time of our first AGM in June 2022, we'd acquired an entirely new membership software system. Our new virtual office manager had been hired. That was Deanne Goddard, now Karen Reinecke. That had been hired to manage that system. We'd codified the procedures of the association in a new set of bylaws, which mandated that there would be an annual general meeting. and our membership had started to increase following some concerted outreach led by Chris Greenshields, who's here today. Perhaps the most important change at that time was consolidating our 7 previous goals into just 2 simple objectives. The first, to build and sustain a community among our members, and the second, to help Canadians better understand and appreciate the value of diplomacy and the value of a professional foreign service. Au cours des 4 dernières années, le conseil d'administration s'est attaché à mettre en œuvre cette vision. Dans l'ensemble, je pense que nous avons très bien réussi. Les membres du conseil sont désormais nommés par l'Assemblée générale annuelle pour 2 mandats consécutifs à 3 ans. Il existe désormais un cycle de renouvellement annuel au sein du conseil. With the departure of Paula Saint-Onge after this meeting, the board that launched the renewal process that I just referred to has been fully turned over and replaced by new people entirely committed to the same objectives. This is the sign of a healthy organization. Nous avons considérablement simplifié les démarches d'adhésion d'AmbCanada et nous avons clairement indiqué sur notre site web les critères d'adhésion ainsi que les procédures à suivre. Nous venons d'achever un processus de 8 mois visant à repenser et actualiser entièrement notre site web. Nous avons désormais mis en place des procédures pour les maintenir à jour. Il s'agit désormais d'un outil qui permet à la fois d'informer les membres de nos activités et de présenter au grand public que nous sommes et ce que nous faisons. In the past 40 years, I think we've made some real progress in fulfilling our second objective of improving Canadians' understanding of the value of diplomacy. Our monthly compendium of op-eds, podcasts, TV interviews with our members, called Members Reach Out, continues to expand in form and content. In addition to being emailed every month to all of you, to our membership, we will now post it monthly on the website as a record for the public to see what our members are saying and speaking. Grâce au généreux soutien financier de bon nombre d'entre vous, nous disposons désormais d'une bourse d'études solidement financée et bien établie, portant le nom de notre regrettée collègue Deborah Chatzis, destinée aux étudiants autochtones de 3e cycle en relations internationales à l'Université Carleton. Vous pouvez également consulter les profils de tous les lauréats à ce jour sur notre site web. The biggest step in raising our public profile came last year when we hosted our first foreign policy conference in this room in partnership with the Centre for International Policy Studies here at the University of Ottawa. Most of you will be attending our second conference this afternoon on realities and illusions of Canadian foreign policy. It's an opportunity to showcase on the record some of the expertise of AmbCanada members alongside academics and experts from think tanks. It's also an opportunity for us to partner with a diverse range of organizations that share an interest in Canadian foreign policy, including PAVSO, the Foreign Service Alumni Forum, and Global Affairs Canada. Nous avons également commencé à nouer des partenariats avec des universités afin d'organiser des événements publics dans d'autres villes du Canada. En octobre, John Holmes a animé une conférence très pertinente sur l'Iran et les États du Golfe à l'Université Western, qui a été diffusée en direct pour l'ensemble de nos adhérents. En avril, notre coordinateur pour Québec, Benoît-Pierre Laramé, a organisé une table ronde très animée, réunissant 4 de nos membres lors d'un rendez-vous gérant le joie à l'Institut d'études internationales de Montréal, à l'UQAM. Canadian universities can provide the physical space and the IT capacity needed for a successful public event. And AmbCanada members can bring their expertise to the table along with faculty from the host university. Together, we can work to promote a successful event to a much wider public than we can reach on our own. This is a model I hope we can repeat in other locations elsewhere in Canada. À l'initiative de Tim Martin, nous avons lancé un projet pilote de mentorat avec des cadets des dernières années du Collège militaire royal que nous espérons étendre cette année. Il s'agit d'une moyen de familiariser de leur formation initiale les futurs dirigeants militaires avec le rôle de la diplomatie dans les affaires étrangères. Through the Canadian Foreign Service Institute, we've begun a series of workshops for current heads of mission on the practice of diplomacy, which we hope will expand in the coming year. We also have an interesting proposal from CIC to co-host a regular series of interviews with former heads of mission on their platform, Open Canada. In sum, we're financially solvent, we have a growing membership, and a well-functioning and energetic board, none of which are a given for a voluntary membership organization. Many of you here in this audience have donated your time to expand our impact by serving on the board or its committees or by moderating or speaking at one of our events. If there's a particular project or activity which you'd like to support, please let us know. With the active involvement of our members, like all of you, we can continue to do great things together. Thank you.
Okay, trying to avoid another mic drop. I'm just going to hold on to it. Okay, thank you, Michael. So as MC, I'm going to pass the floor to me as Vice President, give you a quick report on where I focused my efforts over the last year. This will be quick because my work has largely been covered under Michael's report, but I do want to add or expand on a couple of points. On the website, my focus was to some extent on the member portal because I also chair the Membership Services Committee. So it was aligned with that. So it's now been launched, and hopefully we've tried to make it easier to access and more useful for members. We'll, of course, want to keep the site dynamic and relevant, so that work will have to continue, and your feedback will be important. On the committee itself, the launch of the new website was really critical to do an outreach campaign following on the efforts that Michael mentioned by Chris Greenshields and I know by my predecessor, Kathleen Mackay. So this was a board-wide effort that was coordinated by the Membership Services Committee that focused on a list of some 200 people that we identified as eligible to join, but not a member. Cette initiative continue et je pense que nous avons gagné déjà des nouveaux membres à cause de cet effort du comité exécutif. Prochainement, j'ai pris charge de notre présence aux médias sociaux et j'aimerais saisir ce moment de remercier, je n'ai pas mes lunettes, Anne Leahy, qui était responsable pour ce travail pendant quelques années. Avec l'accord du comité exécutif, j'ai focalisé mes efforts sur LinkedIn avec une présence anglaise et française. Du côté anglais, nous avons maintenant 195 personnes qui nous suivent et ça, c'est une augmentation de 300% au cours des derniers 30 jours. Du côté français, nous avons maintenant 55 personnes qui nous suivent et ça, c'est une augmentation de 40%. Quoi faire sur LinkedIn? Nos activités principales sont de publier nos événements publics et d'amplifier les contributions de nos membres aux conversations sur la politique étrangère. So it's not to just to make sure that what you're doing out there in the field of public policy discourse that we're amplifying as members of AmbCanada. Finally, I did just want to flag an event that we had hoped would take place with the former Governor General, who was patron of AmbCanada, had agreed to participate in an armchair discussion with NIPSIA at Carleton University last November. That grew out of the work that Michael mentioned related to the Deborah Chatsits and was led by Bob Haig. I'm not sure if he's with us today. Thematically, it was a discussion focused on Arctic issues, but the event was really aimed at attracting students, and particularly Indigenous students, to underscore the positive elements of a foreign service career. Malheureusement, Son Excellence était malade et l'événement a été annulé. Nous et NIPSIA demeurons très intéressés et on va explorer des possibilités avec Madame Simon en tant qu'ancienne gouverneure générale. Bon, voilà pour mon rapport et je passe la parole à Phil Pennington, trésorier. Merci.
Other tall one here. So how's that? Good? Okay. So good morning, colleagues. Bonjour, chers collègues. J'ai le plaisir de vous présenter le rapport de trésorier pour 2026. Deux documents étaient inclus dans le dossier de l'AGA. Premièrement, une comparaison entre le budget 2025 et les revenus et dépenses réelles. Et deuxièmement, le budget pour 2026. So for the first, the 2025 budget and the final results, you will see that the deficit was higher than we had budgeted. On the revenue side, we did have an increase in the amount collected from membership fees. On the expense side, as the notes at the bottom of the page explain, lors de la présentation du budget 2025 à l'AGA de l'année dernière, 3 sources potentielles de coûts additionnels ont été identifiées. La transition du bureau virtuel de Diane à Karine, la conception de nouveaux sites web et les coûts liés au congrès avec SIPS qui n'avaient pas encore été finalisés. Ces éléments expliquent la majeure partie de l'augmentation du déficit. As you are aware, the transition from Diane to Karen went well, but there were costs related to the handover period when both of them were on the payroll, as it were, and additional time was needed for Karen to learn the systems involved. The design of the website has been a long process, but I think we'd agree that the result is impressive. And as is often the case with such projects, there was cost overrun due to unforeseen difficulties. I feel like I'm working for OC Transpo here. And our desire to ensure that we got it right. We did not know the full costs of the SIPS conference at the time last year, but as you can see, they were higher than we had anticipated. We have addressed this for the year's conference by raising the registration fee and lowering costs where possible. Le conseil d'administration avait convenu l'année dernière de faire face à tout enjeu de trésorerie découlant du déficit par l'encaissement d'un certificat d'investissement garanti. Mais aucun déficit n'a été encaissé à ce jour, bien qu'un montant de $2,000 a été réservé à cette fin si nécessaire. Regarding our assets, you will see that our bank account remains healthy and that we still have the $35,000 in GICs, although as noted, $10,000 has been earmarked to cover possible cash flow issues arising from the 2025 deficit. So turning to the 2026 budget, we are projecting a surplus. Unfortunately, the document that was published said it was a deficit and it was in red. But hallelujah, it's a surplus of $1,450. Du côté des revenus, pour les frais d'adhésion, nous avons fixé à $30 000, un montant peut-être faible mais prudent. Nous avons également reçu $1,500 supplémentaires de HKC, anciennement CFSD, how the department loves to change the titles of its units. Projected 2026 costs are lower for the website, which is essentially done. The AGM, as discussed earlier, by moving it here and piggybacking on the conference, we have reduced the costs. And the holiday reception. Now, we have used the holiday reception to invite some special guests as part of the association's outreach activities. We propose to reduce the number of VIPs invited and hence the cost by examining the list, as there are some who consistently have been unable to attend and we have still paid for them. So we will lower the number of VIPs invited. As noted above, we have increased the registration fee for the SIPS conference. The amount budgeted for luncheons is less, because we anticipate fewer events where we pay the costs of the speaker and administration. Et dernièrement, les coûts de bureau virtuel seront suivis de près. C'est encore $20,000 comme l'année passée, mais comme j'ai dit, on le suivi clairement, suivi de près juste pour assurer que ça reste n'est plus de $20,000. So note on two other issues. We try to set the price for lunches at the club and for the holiday reception so that those who can attend in person are paying for the full cost of their participation. There are additional costs related to live streaming them on Zoom, which we regard as a corporate benefit, so we cover those from the fees. The ROGC, or the club, did not raise the cost of the lunch for 2026, but they did say that there may be costs for using new audiovisual equipment that is being installed, but we do not know what the impact of those costs is going to be at the moment. Regarding membership fees, the board considered whether we should raise the fees for 2027 and concluded that our reserves were sufficient at the moment to cover any likely deficit and that there was not a case this year to raise the fees. Cela dit, les frais sont restés inchangés ces 4 dernières années et il se peut donc à un moment donné, l'inflation nous oblige à envisager de les augmenter. Et voilà le rapport de trésorerie pour 2026. I'll just want to address one other issue, which is an ugly rumor that has gone out about how right after I became the treasurer, my wife and I took a round the world tour. And I just want to point out the size of the budget, and that level of corruption would, of course, be impossible. So all I've managed was a Saturday night at the Holiday Inn in Cornwall. So there we go. But anyway, now that I'm retired, I refuse to do anything completely straight. So that's the report. I would welcome any questions or comments.
Thanks, Phil. So we're in pretty good time. So in addition to any questions that anybody might have for Phil, we can take a few minutes now if anybody has any questions stemming from Michael's report or mine. Ian, did you have your hand up? No. Okay. Yes, Gaston. Yeah. I'm sorry, for the online people, you do need to come up. There's nobody online. Oh, but are the people able to listen online? Oh.
Recording and transcript.
Okay. So what? You're here. You're here now, Gaston. Oh, you turn on the mic? Yeah. It's right here. Halfway. Here, do you want mine?
Come on.
It's easier to prove yesterday.
There you go.
Hello. Thank you. A question about the Mary Simon event that you said was postponed or hopefully postponed. You mentioned that she was the patron of the organization. And I was wondering whether that is, she was the patron in name or in office. In other words, is the plan to ask the current Governor General to become our patron of this organization? I think it would be fitting if we could do that, not only because the Governor General signs all our letters of accreditation, but more importantly, the kind of prestige that would come to the organization were we to have a patron like the Governor General of Canada.
Yeah. Thank you, Gaston. So the answer is not actually very simple. I think I can answer it, but Michael might prefer to. No? Okay. So we asked her to be an honorary member of the organization because she was indeed an ambassador. They came back to accept to be a patron of the organization. And as patron of the organization, it was time limited to her office. So she's patron as Governor General. So we've now written back to say, thank you so much for serving as our patron, and we'd like to know if you would be an honorary member. We haven't heard back. We're continuing to pursue that. So for Mary Simon herself, I think we would like to see her as an honorary member of the organization. In terms of your proposal to approach the current Governor General, who of course has done particularly awesome international work, I think that that's a very good suggestion and happy to take that back to the board. OK. D'autres questions? Oui, Anne.
An idea.
Oui.
In terms of the accomplishments over the past few years, Michael, you mentioned, I think one that we've all really appreciated which was an idea, certainly, if not initiated, on which Gary Smith worked a lot, and that was ambassadors of note, les ambassadeurs de marque. Et on a eu 2 rondes, ça a pris 2 ans et quelques mois pour faire un sondage pour identifier quels étaient nos ambassadeurs de marque. Et l'idée était un peu de se servir de ça comme outil pour mieux faire connaître la diplomatie et la diplomatie canadienne. We're very sorry, of course, that Gary isn't with us anymore, but I do know, and I think some of us who were on the board at the time remember that Gary always was counting on the 3rd round. So I would just like, while noting, I think we all regret that Gary is now gone, that we will keep in mind, and when you have the time, the resources, perhaps sooner rather than later, we should enclencher la 3e ronde des ambassadeurs de marque. Merci.
Let's see, is this working? Yeah. Thank you for raising that, and I think the board should discuss it. You may have noticed, those of you, if you've looked at the website, we deliberately created one of the columns, if you can go at the top, called Canadian Diplomacy, and the Ambassadors of Note is a major piece of content on that. And in the work in revising the website, I had occasion to look a number of times at the Ambassadors of Note, and I can see ways it could be renewed or expanded. Maybe not in quite the same ethos as the first 2 rounds. And, you know, I could see a case for perhaps identifying people who were ambassadors who brought, frankly, who contributed to the diversity a bit more of the Foreign Service, which, given the pool from which the ambassadors were recruited back in the day, doesn't look like the Foreign Service of today. That would be an angle we could go. But I think there's a space for a discussion now, and we'll talk a bit more about other possible initiatives that we could do. But I think there's room for a discussion about revisiting that and seeing how we can build on what was already accomplished.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, then I think we can move to the next item on the agenda, and that is a discussion on an approval of the changes to the bylaws. So, Michael, over to you.
That video that kicks out before the forum.
Is this on? Yes, it is. So in an ideal world, we would have devoted an entire hour to this. We would put up the existing bylaws on the screen, and in like a UN drafting committee, I would walk through every textual change. And that would probably exceed everyone's attention span except mine on this topic. So we did send you what the proposed revised bylaws looked like earlier this week. What the great majority of them are textual changes that frankly improve precision and wording in the bylaws that were adopted in 2022. And I think it would be more, as I just said, more time than would be worth to really go through for everybody what those are. So I'm inviting you to take it on faith that the board actually did its work and, you know, has cleaned things up. But there are some substantive changes, and let me just describe them to you what they are so that people are well aware, because I will put it to a vote for approval for the amendments to the bylaws. The first is we made some wording changes to the 2 objectives. And that was really, again, with exactly the same intention, but to be a bit more precise. So the existing bylaws say that the first objective is to build and serve the community of colleagues whose careers included serving abroad as senior level government diplomats. And we've just modified that to say to build and serve a community of colleagues who share the experience of leading a Canadian diplomatic mission abroad. We want to put the emphasis on leading a diplomatic mission because the membership of the association are people who have been heads of mission or deputy heads of mission or chargé for more than 1 year, and that seemed to be the unifying factor. So it's a bit more precise than referring to senior level Canadian diplomats. On the second objective, we just simplified the wording a little bit so that we took out a couple of subordinate clauses. So it now reads, to increase public awareness of the importance of diplomacy and the value of professional foreign service to Canada's security, prosperity, and well-being. It's a sentence I often quote in letters and talking points, so getting it in a nice, concise form was important. That's the sort of, there are other wording changes, but those two I thought I would flag. We changed a bit the terms for the officers. When we drafted the bylaws, this organization hadn't had any. So, we were a little bit taking a stab in the dark. For reasons that frankly elude me now, we decided that the president and the vice president should have a 2-year term that could be repeated once, and the other officers would have a 3-year term. That doesn't make any sense. we're putting the president, the vice president, the treasurer, all of them on a 2-year term. We're also saying that it can be renewed up until the end of a person's mandate. Now, the maximum mandate for a board member is 2 3-year terms, i.e. 6 years. But in the event you actually have somebody who is appointed in their first year on the board and wants to keep serving in that capacity right up till the end of their time on the board, looking at the treasurer, there's no reason why they should be obliged to step down. So we're simply making that can be renewed, an officer up to the end of your time on the board. A third change that we made was we had originally included 2 other officer positions besides president, vice president, and treasurer. A membership secretary who would really kind of drive the membership recruitment outreach, keep track of who was retiring, who we could reach out to, and a secretary who, like any organization, would keep the minutes. On the latter position, frankly, not surprisingly, no one volunteers to be the secretary. The last such person is here in the audience, and she isn't putting up her hand to repeat the experience. And frankly, we found that the board members are perfectly willing on a rotating basis to keep minutes. So we simply changed the bylaws to say the board can't appoint a secretary because it would be dumb not to allow you to do so, but doesn't say it's expected. The membership secretary was an interesting idea, but frankly, it's been taken over by the committee that, first of all, Kathleen and now Allison chairs as membership services. So we're simply dropping that function. We don't need it. And this reflects now 4 years of experience with the bylaws. So this is, sounds like administrative tidy up, but it's important to have it right. We've added one new section on how the board can remove one of its officers. I hope that never has to happen, but if the bylaws were silent on that. The board appoints the president, the vice president for the repeating 2-year terms, as I just said. So there needs to be a way of removing them if there's reasons for cause. So there's some basic simple procedures, but requiring due notice and a quorum and the opportunity for the person to, explain themselves. So that's there as a safeguard. And the last item is probably the most important, I think, and probably the one that's going to touch, I hope, the widest number of people. We've always been a bit ambiguous as to what the status of spouses are in this organization. They've always been welcome to participate, to come to our events, but we never exactly clarified that. So spouses have had the status of associate members, but there are actually 2 categories of associate members. There's associate members who are spouses of current members, and then there are associate members whose spouses have passed away or are no longer interested in being involved with the association, but the spouse in question wants to stay connected with this community. So that latter group, which currently numbers about 14, they pay a dues, a fee. It's a little bit less than the regular membership fee, and they have all the privileges of participating except for voting at this meeting. And as a consequence, because they pay a fee, they exist in our membership system and they have a profile in the directory and we communicate with them directly. But all the other spouses who might want to be involved, and some of whom are absolutely coming to our event this afternoon, kind of don't have an organizational status. So the simple thing to do was create a status called spousal members. So going forward, we're proposing to have associate members, or people whose spouses are not a member but had been a member or could have been a member, and then spousal members who are spouses of any of you, plus the wider membership. And spousal members, again, will have all the same rights to participate short of voting at the annual general meeting. They don't pay a fee. We're not planning on changing that, but it's voluntary. So if your spouse is not interested, that's fine. But if they are interested, we'll set in some procedures this summer so that they can send in a membership, well, not an application, just a registration. They get a profile in the membership directory they will start getting emailed directly. They can pay to attend events directly, and they're no longer, connected to all of you, which, look, we've all been heads of mission. So this is not exactly new news for the Foreign Service, but it was kind of time that we brought it up to date for our own practices and embedded it in the system. So that change is creating a new category of spousal members. So that's it. I'm going to stop there, and I'm happy to take any questions about what is and isn't in the bylaws, or and comments on anything I've just said.
Came in online related to the bylaws, or is that? Okay, we'll hold that for later then.
Investigation of the treasurer?
I am not seeing anyone rushing to ask any further questions about that. So in that case, can I put it to a voice vote? All those in favor of these amendments to the bylaws, please just raise your hands, actually. Great. Anyone opposed? No. Wonderful. Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So I think the next agenda item is Ian.
Merci beaucoup. At this time, the nomination committee, comprising of myself, Alex Pugulissis, and Chris Thornley, would like to sincerely thank Paula Caldwell for her contributions to the board over the past number of years. She served 2 terms, and we are grateful for her energy and contributions to our organization. Et ça m'a fait grand plaisir d'annoncer pour votre approbation le nom de Nathalie Dubé comme le nouveau remplacement. Merci beaucoup, Nathalie. And I'd like to, with a show of hands, the General Assembly would formally agree and approve. All those in favor for Nathalie Dubé? Merci. Anyone opposed or abstentions? Bienvenue, Nathalie. Merci beaucoup. And as Michael has mentioned during his remarks at the beginning of today's meeting, he will be finishing his term as president of our organization in July. And so at the first board meeting in July, the board will be selecting a new president for our organization. And we just want to make sure that all of you and the members across Canada knew about this decision, which will be taking place in July. Merci beaucoup.
Okay. Thank you, Ian. Bienvenue, Nathalie. So we now come to other business. That's the end of the formal agenda. Yes, and I know we have one question from online, somebody who managed to get through, even though we're still not live. We still have a technical issues. Yeah. No, I just wondered whether in the meantime. So Olivier, there's a question.
Merci. Donc la question est de Phil Calvert. Et celui comme suit, it's following the President's report. I understand that AmbCanada met with the Foreign Affairs Deputy Minister about the cuts to GAC before they were announced. But it seems from media reports that the cuts are more heavily focused on positions abroad. This seems extremely short-sighted if Canada's aim is to build partnerships with other countries, or are the cuts focused on US posts? Given our interest in supporting and preserving the profession, is AmbCanada planning to comment on this?
Thank you, Phil, for that question. So I'll partly take that as a comment from you, which I'm sure is shared by lots of other members, but let me address some facts. First of all, we didn't actually meet with, Allison and I last summer after the AGM called on David Morrison. And at that point, the Carney government had literally been sworn in the week before. And he described in some detail kind of where the renewal of diplomacy project was at. And clearly deficit reduction was on the horizon, but hadn't happened yet. Then, if you recall, those of you who were at the December reception, David Morrison himself spoke about, what he knew at that point was, I'm sure the department, and certainly he had already been kind of given the targets to meet. They hadn't yet begun the rollout of the reduction process. Once they started doing that and approaching employees in all categories, looking for people to take retirement subject to legislation, which was subsequently passed, ourselves as the board, but in combination with the forum, we jointly requested a meeting we didn't go to the David Morrison, but we jointly requested a meeting with Antoine Chevrier, who is the Chief Transformation Officer and in charge of Human Resources, plus Catherine Jobin, who's the Assistant Deputy Minister for Strategic Policy, and really, frankly, has overseen a lot of the operationalization of that. And that was a briefing. It was a very good briefing. It was for about an hour. It wasn't focused at all on which positions were going to go where, because if I remember correctly, and a number of you were present from the board involved in that conversation, they really walked us through the procedures. And at that point, it was very much driven by, frankly, by the employees. The department had targets they had to meet in each employee category, but they were looking for essentially volunteers, people willing to take the package that was offered in early retirement. So we really discussed the procedures which they were following rather than what the net outcome was going to be. And that was the last engagement we've had directly with the department. Now, Allison and I, following this meeting, are going to see the new Undersecretary or Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs, Arun Tangaraj, and we're actually going to call on both the other two of the other three deputies as well, just to kind of take a pulse of the current organization. So we'll be a little better informed at firsthand about what the current state of affairs is next week. As for the issue of taking a position, I mean, I'll take the opportunity to say, my view has been as president that the one area where I think the association has a clear position to take a position on in the public is on the management of the Foreign Service. Having said that, my own view is we need to be a bit sparing about that and pick our moments and opportunities. So, and to do so at a moment when we're well informed as to what the facts of the matter are. So I'll reserve judgment as to whether I think a proactive comment is needed after we do some soundings next week. More interestingly, we tend to respond when media calls that up. And we got a lot of media inquiries about substantive foreign policy issues earlier in the year. And our practice is to direct those to somebody who, in our membership who knows that part of the world and let them speak in their own capacity rather than us taking a position. So we're keeping a watching brief is the short answer on this. Last thing I'll say, I've been the president of PAVSO, I've been the ADM for personnel, and I'm in this job. So I've kind of been around this block a few times. There are moments, particularly where it touches the role and capacity and effectiveness of head of mission, where I think we've got a clear role to play. But PAVSO is it's a remarkably well-funded organization compared to ours, and plays exactly that kind of proactive role on commenting on cuts. So I'm a little reserved about going on a proactive basis on those issues. But if people come to us and say, what's the impact on Canada's capacity to deliver on foreign policy abroad? I think that's a space for us to provide some measured comment.
Okay. Sorry, I apologize for jumping in and adding. It's just that I know that probably everybody in this room, once you mentioned that you were ambassador, had anything to do with external affairs, global affairs, the question always is, oh, my son, my daughter, they're interested. How do they join? And I just wanted to pass on that the department had committed to do an external FS1 process in the fall. Right now, and I'm involved in it, they're doing an internal FS1 process, and mainly because of the need. In some cases, if they hire somebody as FS1, then obviously their existing position could come into play. And I think that's why they've decided to go internal rather than external. But my understanding, and it would be interesting to see what you hear, is that there is still a commitment to do an external, similar to the type of processes that brought many of us in. They're still committed to doing it in the fall. Whether they'll be able to do it or not, of course, is a different question, but the commitment is there. And so if you get those sorts of questions, I would advise, tell people to pay attention to jobs.gc.ca, because there could be something coming in a while. Thanks.
Michael, can I also jump in? I would just like to add one of the conversations that has sort of bubbled up in the conversations that Michael and I have had is the wealth of experience and capacity that is in this organization. We're not the only one. The forum is another, but foreign service officers who, whether ambassadors or not, have retired, do remain a resource that can be drawn on an as-needed basis. So, and I think I know I've done a couple of short stints. There's other people in this room that have done that, either Ottawa-based or in missions abroad. And I think that not that replaces, a strong, dynamic foreign service with a good pipeline. But, I think that it is something that we want to keep on the radar screen of the department, is that there is capacity to fill gaps in this organization and to offer, experience and expertise that the department may well be losing. I think one of the numbers the metrics was that something like 75% of the executive cadre of the department is actually eligible for retirement. So that's a big chunk of leadership that can leave if they so choose. Hopefully some will come here, but I think that we become even more so a resource for the department. Yes, Sabina. Please, if you wouldn't mind, yeah. Oops. Or take it out, maybe, yeah, okay.
This is my Dutch experience. When I was in the Netherlands, I always had to lower the microphone. Whoever spoke before me was at least a head taller than I was. Just to follow up briefly with Michael, ideally, on the point that Phil Calvert raised, I think the issue that Phil is after speaks directly to the second objective of this organization, is making Canadians understand the value of diplomacy. And I have a sneaking feeling that the Carney government doesn't understand that. Partly because, whenever a really interesting, valuable, and necessary position comes up, he appoints one of his, economist friends. But also some of the public policy announcements that he made just yesterday, the comment at the G7 about the outcome of this so-called Iran peace deal, quote unquote. I'm not sure that there is enough input on foreign policy issues from seasoned foreign policy professionals with this government to mitigate some of the rather unfortunate things that they say and do or don't do. And of course, the cutbacks, I think, feature very, very strongly into that. When they talk about building alliances, building new agreements, et cetera, I mean, who's going to be doing that? It's going to be people like us. So I would very strongly urge the executive, when you pick your battles, to choose that one, because I think it's a really important one. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabine. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions, d'autres commentaires, d'autres propositions? Oui, Anne.
Un des canaux de communication, c'est bien sûr la ministre. Et par le passé, on a toujours cherché à avoir une rencontre avec le ou la ministre des Affaires étrangères. I've noticed that Anita Anand is being interviewed tomorrow by Janice Stein at the Munk Center, open to the media. Is this the sort of thing we should be seeking again, to have a meeting as an association of X in whatever format she's comfortable with? but at least to make that step. I don't know if perhaps you have written her to ask that, but now anyway would be the time, because clearly she's doing it at the Mung Center, therefore there might be an awareness campaign. Hier, ou il y a 2 jours, le 16 juin, le Québec a rendu public sa 3e mouture en moins de 10 ans d'une politique internationale. Et là, il y a des échanges, il y a des consultations, il y a une visibilité. Mais il y a peut-être quelque chose que nous pouvons faire, que l'exécutif peut faire auprès de Mme Anand. Merci.
Is this working? Yeah. Melanie Jolie also did an appearance at the Mug Center about the same time into her tenure, which I watched. It seems to be, a destination. I'm always, what the hell, I'm retired. I'm always impressed at how little our ministers actually say in public on almost any topic, the Prime Minister being a notable exception. So to be very straightforward about it, at least in my time, I haven't sought out contact at the political level. We all had a lot of that in our professional career. And frankly, I thought that in terms of there was more receptivity and frankly more predictability to building a good working relationship with the senior levels of the department, where we listened to what they had to say and offered our expertise where we could. And certainly under David Morrison, that was invited and reciprocated. We'll see what the new regime is. Without getting into an extended discussion right now, which is a very suitable topic for the way over lunch, Sabina, like everybody in this room, I'm watching the same trends you are. The calculus, and I'm out of this role in about 4 weeks' time, but the calculus is we are a voluntary association, so I think in many ways the more powerful statements come from our individual members, and that's why, as a general practice, what we've been trying to do is steer media inquiries and create platforms and opportunities for any and all of you to state your own view on the contradictions involved, or coherence in policy. It's also why we're hosting a conference in about an hour and a half called Realities and Illusions of Canadian Foreign Policy, which is completely on the record, and allowing a mixture of our members and academics and think tank peoples to identify both of those things. So it's really the trade-off is between what do our individual members say and how do we amplify that versus what do we say in the name of the association. But it's a space to watch, and frankly, I really appreciate the feedback from people, because it gives us more as a board to kind of chew through in terms of what profile that we want to adopt going forward.
Thank you. Gilles.
Bon, mon Dieu, je n'ai pas besoin d'y toucher. Quand j'ai joint ce qui s'appelait l'ACMAR il y a une dizaine d'années, on était une organisation qui était plus ou moins fragile. I just want to say that the work that has been done, when I was there, our biggest challenge, and I look at my former colleague, was to keep ACMAR head of the water. After the COVID, we were going down. We found a way to keep the organization head of the water, but you guys, Michael, you're leaving today after 4 years, and the team that is here, and Paula, who's leaving, you've done a great job. Where we are now, I'm quite impressed by what I see, and I say, keep going. It's a lot of work, but you've done something great. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the whole board, thank you for that and for everyone's expression. And look, it's been a privilege to kind of. These organizations don't self-administer. They don't. And when all of us, I'm sure, are involved, whether it's community groups or arts groups or educational associations or foreign policy groups, we're all involved in other kinds of circles, and we know this. So the fact that this organization is where we are, and it was founded in 1987 with the input from quite a few of you. I wrote up a history of your association, which you'll find on the website. It's a testimony. Most foreign services don't have anything like this. So thank you, because it's actually, it's a little bit like the famous swan. You've got to put a fair amount of effort just to keep things on track. And if you can move things forward a little bit, tant mieux. So, but it's appreciated. And we get there, frankly, with the active interest of as many people as there are in this room. So thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Well, that I think brings us to a close in pretty good time. So let me just say, first of all, merci beaucoup. Thank you very much for coming. A couple of housekeeping points. We still have the coat of arms cards. There are a few packages left. They're for sale on the table outside. $10 cash on the barrel. If you would like some note cards with our new coat of arms. And then a very budget conscious comment that there is lunch out there for those of you that have registered for the conference.
One sandwich per person.
Yes.
Right?
So I hope that's everybody, although now I see Karen's hand, which makes my stomach sink. Is lunch there? Pardon? Oh, okay.
If you want, it would be much easier to want to shift your seats up so that people can use the time. And we're gonna be spacing out the tables a little better while when you leave for noon. So we're expecting like another 70 people.
Yeah, it's going to be cozy. Although I think it would also be nice to mix it up a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. And before you leave, I would just like to turn the mic over to Kathleen Mackay.
So, let me start with merci Gilles. J'aimerais célébrer un peu les 5 ans de Michael Small en tant que président. I think you've all noted the initiative, energy, and dedication that Michael has shown in his 5 years as president of AmbCanada. I don't want to continue on. I think you're all aware of it, but si vous voulez me joindre, if you'd like to join me in a round of applause for Michael in his 5 years as president.
Thanks, Kathleen.
Lunch.
Lunch.